So what I've done is I've put up last year's trial examination for Year 12 Standard and Advanced as a bit of a practice paper for you for the half yearlies. Now the reason I've done that is if you go to the NISA website, you will find that a lot of their information is copywritten and you can't really access the imagery or some of the text, and so it's very, very frustrating. You can go and have a look at the questions and so forth, but it does cause those issues. So let's have a look or break down what's going on here with this particular sample that you can work with and do some practice. You'll get in the half-yearly exam this stimulus booklet. You'll get two booklets. One will be the questions, the other one will be the stimulus booklet. And you have, in this particular exam, 10 minutes of reading time. It's the only one where you get those 10 minutes. And there's considerable reading, so I don't recommend you read with great detail in that 10-minute period those longer texts, but that you start to sort of almost précis some of the ideas in the texts and think about how they all work. What you'll do is you'll get a piece of information that will tell you the types of text that you'll be facing with an exam. In this case, last year, they got a film poster, a podcast transcript, a poem, and a fiction extract. And that's pretty standard. You'll get an image, you'll get extended pieces of writing, both critical, autobiographical, and creative. You may or may not get poetry. Poetry, it's good if you get it because it's not as difficult to read, but it is much more difficult to interpret. You then have a section 2, which is your inspiration for the creative. And finally, of course, we give you a list of the prescribed text. You know that in your situation is Robert Frost. That is the section 3, where you need to actually bring your knowledge of Frost and your related text into play. But let's think about section 1 first. Now, you've got 40 minutes for each section. They're all of equal weight, 15 marks each. And so you need to do well in each one of them. And section 1's a really good one to sort of build your marks. The texts are right in front of you, so you should be able to manage to build a really good sort of grade in this section. If you feel that you might struggle in one of the other sections, you should feel confident with this one. You know they're going to be about discovery, and you know the questions are going to really come from that rubric. So that's imperative to the way it thinks. So let's have a look here. This first one we have here, they got a film poster for a movie called Flipped. Reasonably difficult to look at because it's very, very dark, but you can see that there's patches of light here in this section. You might make note of that and the position of these figures. And that, of course, is very important. You say, okay, I've got to deconstruct something visual here. I need to deconstruct an idea of visually what's occurring. You have people possibly looking into the infinite, looking forward to the new life, turning their back on the old life, fashioning the idea that discovery is an ever-growing, ever-endearing, needful pursuit, that discovery is a connection between two people. There's all sorts of things going on there. But also importantly, you need to take note of what's being written, because you'll usually get a 2-mark question, and one will be about the visual, one will be about the text. And you have here either, this is just advertising from the director of the Bucket List, Stand By Me and When Harry Met Sally, and that's fine. But down here you've got You Never Forget Your First Love. And so that little sort of byline of the film, the one that sort of gets you in emotionally, is really where the crux is going to be. You've got second person, you never forget your first love, that says every person out there, you, all of you, have experienced this as the filmmaker, and the film participants have experienced it. Therefore, it's a universal discovery, the discovery of first love. And that is kind of where it works in that sense. The next one you have is this podcast transcript. Now, yes, there's a lot of reading when you look at it, but you say to yourself, okay, it's a podcast, which means that these words were spoken, not written. These are people speaking, so there's an oratory going on here. And the responses are not necessarily prepared. It's more or less looking at how we engage with question and answer. It's called This American Life. It's from a radio station in America, WEBZ, or they say WEBZ. And you've got this Ira Glass who's asking this Rebecca her stories. Rebecca remembers exactly when she learned the astonishing truth. She was in 2nd grade and ran to her best friend Rachel at school one day. This opening line sets up what's going on in this particular sort of document, and I would consider this section to be key. When she learned the astonishing truth, and the word astonishing is one I would fashion a highlight around. I'd say, okay, what does that word do in terms of impact, and get ready for the questions. And then as you read the rest, you'll get to see what that astonishing truth is, and you'll note that it's reasonably easy reading, usually 2 pages. Take your time, make sure that you pull out all sorts of little clever moments that are in there and little clever little nuances with language, and that's what you need to be after. We get a poem here, and you start to look at the poem. You go, okay, it's working in couplets. Are there any rhymes, rhythms, anything that's working that says to me this is poetic technique? Where's the metaphors? Where's the imagery? Have a quick look at those kinds of things. Look at this sort of, I saw the last living snow leopard pacing in the dirt, this enjambment there with the word pacing and the leopard and the imagery that strikes, and think, okay, it's probably going to be a question about something where I could use something like that. Then finally here we have a fiction extract from All the Light You Cannot See, which is, yeah, nice and long and lovely and not a problem. But yeah, there it is there. Yeah. Of course, any good fiction extract, you're looking at how fiction works in terms of narrative, in terms of characterization, and in terms of descriptive writing. And that's really what you need to look for in the way in which the writer is nuancing discovery through their work. So that's what you get with section 1. You get about 4 or 5 texts. It's ways up. We will generally sort of follow that pattern of 4 here within the school. NISA may give you 5. That is something we can't control. But the general essence is it will be similar to this. It can't ever be exact. I can't say that this is what a half-yearly stimulus booklet will look like when you do the final exam, because they might flip it completely and flipped. They might say, okay, let's have a script first and not a picture. So please don't see this as an absolute. This is just an example or sample of what you can experience in the exam. So what do you do with this? Well, what you'll get is also paper 1. Well, for you guys, it's just your half-yearly exam paper, but when we get to the trial, as you note here, it's a trial, there's 2 exam papers, and what you're doing in the half-yearly is the same as a paper 1 in the exam and in the trial and so forth. So we have a look here. Section 1, 15 marks, Section 2, 15 marks, Section 3, 15 marks. It all comes out evenly, so you need to make sure that that is occurring. And we look here, Section 1 is the one we're concerned with now. This relates directly to all those texts in the stimulus booklet. Take a note of this. These 2 dot points always point you in the right direction. You should be highlighting or thinking about what's happening in those dot points, because that is what you need to be answering, because that's where we're getting our criteria from. Are you demonstrating an understanding of the way perceptions of discovery are shaped in and through text? And that's what this section in this paper asks the students to do. Perceptions of discovery shaped in and through text. And think about what that might mean. Perception might mean, shaped in and through might mean the text within the language of the text, or of course what it means to be through all the different texts. Is there a connection somewhere? And of course, describe, explain, and analyze the relationship between language, text, and context. Okay, that each of these texts don't just operate in of themselves. They have a context, they have a relationship with the audience, they have a relationship within themselves, and keep that at the forefront of your mind at all times. The other thing you need to make note of are the mark scales down the side. Again, these do change. They generally go from small to large, generally. But you need to sort of say to yourself, it's not always going to be 2, 1, 2, 4, 6, that the pattern will always go up to 6 or 5, but it sort of is in that realm of, it could be 1, 2, 2, 1. That's up to NISA. The first question is worth 2 marks. So to me, you're actually going, how does the film poster suggest an optimistic discovery? As I said before, there's 2 things going on in that poster. There's text and there's image. And there's 2 marks. So I would discuss the image and the text. in order to really fully appreciate how that's going on. I wouldn't just state the technique, I need to actually clarify what that means in terms of how it's shaping meaning, and that's very important. The next one, identify the tone. Identifying tone is quite easy. Is it a sarcastic tone, a friendly tone, a conversational tone? Concerning the childhood discovery, not just the text, but relating to the issue of discovery. And I would suggest it's something like a surprise and a sort of removal of the childhood self as going on there. How is this tone achieved? Now, that's a language question, and there's 2 marks there, so I'll go for 2 techniques that are language-based. This one here is big, it's worth 4. How does the poet convey her experience of discovery? Now that's huge. You need to really think about 4 poetic techniques that are embedded in that poem that relate to discovery, just like you do with Robert Frost. Now, that one's going to make you work hard. That is a lot of marks attributed to one singular poem, but there it is. And finally, of course, this fiction extract and podcast transcript, which comes into the last question. And sometimes you'll get a question on the fiction and then you're asked to evaluate. This one is asking you to compare the way childhood discoveries are presented in text 4 and text 2. Simple as that. You're forcing your hand as to where the 6-mark question is. And at 6 marks, it is a mini essay. That's 6 marks out of 15. That is pretty much almost 50%, not quite, but almost 50% of that section. It is that question D or E that you have to nail. You deliver it as an essay. You don't just deliver it in point form. You write a proper flowing essay with a thesis statement. In your 40 minutes, that little part should be 20 minutes of your writing. Therefore, you are not wasting all your time on the other questions. You are answering them as you need to. And that's section 1. Give this shot a go. Have a go at this section and submit to your teacher.